die. It wasn't suicide. Today we're putting away the tinfoil hats and looking at the brutal reality of deceptive non-suicidality and the clinical architecture of the dead man's switch. Over to you, Mrs. Grumpy.
It's a message that has appeared across the social media feeds of tech fugitives like John McAfee, aerospace whistleblowers like John Barnett, and public accusers like Virginia Giuffre. They warn the world they aren't suicidal right before they turn up dead. When these deaths are reported, the immediate public reaction is almost always the same. Millions of people interpret these preemptive warnings as definitive proof of a corporate or government assassination, yet the forensic investigations tell a different story. In case after case, investigators find locked door crime scenes, single fingerprint ballistic, and medical autopsies that indicate the cause of death was self-inflicted. This creates a massive gap between the forensic evidence and the public outcry. It's a gap fueled by a specific expectation that a person intending to end their life will look, act, and speak like a visibly depressed person up until the final moment. This investigation looks at a different possibility, that a public declaration of "I am not suicidal" might not be a warning about hitmen at all. Instead, it may be a specific indicator of how an individual manages their own legacy when they've already decided to die. Usually, when a friend or a clinician hears someone explicitly deny having suicidal thoughts, they take it as a sign of safety. They treat the verbal assurance as a factual baseline. This chart shows the results of a 2021 literature review by Dr. Joseph Obegi analysing decades of forensic psychiatric data. The numbers are striking. 50% of individuals who died by suicide explicitly denied having suicidal ideation in the month before their death. In specific studies of hospital patients, that number rises to 78%. Concealment is often an active defensive strategy. If a person has made a firm decision to act, they recognise that honesty will trigger immediate intervention. Involuntary hospitalisation, the loss of autonomy, or the confiscation of firearms. To ensure their plan succeeds, they utilise denial as tactical camouflage. This leads to a second misconception. The idea that because someone was in good spirits or making future plans, they couldn't have been at risk. Standard melancholic depression often involves psychomotor retardation, a physical lethargy that can actually prevent a person from having the energy to act. But atypical depression, often called smiling depression, allows an individual to maintain a high-functioning facade. They go to work, participate in legal depositions, and maintain social relationships. Because these individuals maintain their executive function and energy levels, they possess the cognitive focus required to plan a lethal act meticulously while appearing completely fine to the people around them. The Biodyne model tracks the progression of a person wrestling with the choice to live or die. For a long time, they exist in a state of erratic agony and ambivalence. But notice what happens at the vertical marker labelled the decision. Once the choice is finalised, the internal conflict disappears and the emotional distress drops to zero. This is known as the autopilot phase. The individual often experiences a sudden, profound sense of relief because their internal struggle has been resolved. To their family or legal team, this looks like a recovery when it is actually a sign of absolute resolve. This psychological shift is similar to terminal lucidity, the documented medical phenomenon where patients with late-stage dementia suddenly regain clarity just before death. In both cases, an illusion of recovery often precedes the end. But how do we account for the specific trauma of the whistleblower? To a person standing alone against a multi-billion-dollar corporation, the threat of retaliation is not a theory, it is their daily reality. When an individual reports corporate malfeasance, the response is often a years-long campaign of isolation, character assassination, and legal warfare. The constant hypervigilance required to survive this environment can eventually mutate into clinical paranoia and severe PTSD. Large organisations don't need kinetic assassins to silence a critic. By systematically destroying an individual's professional identity and social support over a period of years, they create a level of psychological pressure that can make death feel like the only available escape. If the forensic data points towards suicide, it makes the dead man switch itself a mystery. Why would someone who intends to take their own life leave a permanent record claiming they were murdered? In many of these cases, the motive is legacy control. John McAfee spent years as a fugitive, but his arrest in Spain and the approval of his extradition to the US meant a life sentence in federal prison. For an individual with a massive public profile, framing a suicide as an assassination allows them to maintain control of their narrative. It bypasses the social stigma, grants them martyrdom, and inflicts permanent reputational damage on their enemies from beyond the grave. We have to reconsider how we assess these statements. Treating a declaration like, "I am not suicidal," as an absolute truth, regardless of the person's environmental stress or psychiatric history, is a failure of investigation. Choosing the sensationalism of an assassination theory ignores the documented reality of high-stakes isolation. We stop looking for the signs of a person in crisis the moment we start looking for ghosts.
If you enjoyed this or have any criticisms, let us know in the comments, please.